They told us masks work. They told us we have a federal plan. Joe Biden said that himself. They told us there would never be a vaccine mandate. They told us people who get vaccinated can't get the virus. The vaccinated can't transmit the virus. And they told us there was no such thing as natural immunity. Think about this. Think about this. At the same time, Democrats require you to put on a mask, show your papers and an ID to get a Big Mac at McDonald's. They want to allow the federal government to stop states from requiring a photo ID to vote.
That was Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan criticizing the Biden administration for misleading the American people. The congressman is the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, and he joins me now. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thanks very much for being here. I want to get right into the Biden COVID strategy because there are more Americans dead from COVID on his watch than the prior year. Your reaction to why they continue to mislead the American people?
I think the Attorney General from Missouri had it right. It's about power and control. It's certainly not about the science. It's certainly not about the truth. It's certainly not about the facts. It's about power and control. And it's just one more thing that they've done wrong. I mean, frankly, I don't know that they've done anything right. What was the Quinnipiac poll had his approval rating at 33%. I think the real question is, who are these 33%? I mean, who are the people who actually think that he's doing a good job? So, yeah, they've messed up every single thing. You think about the message that they're sending to families, particularly in urban areas, where they're saying, we're not going to let your kids go to school. We're going to let bad guys roam the street. And oh, by the way, we're also going to let illegal immigrants vote. I mean, that's the message they're sending. No wonder no one approves of what this administration is doing.
Congressman, I want to get to the letter that you sent Javier Becerra in a moment. But first, you mentioned the other day that representatives on the floor of the House were getting masks made by China. I want to get your take on this whole Chinese component here, because the CCP has made it very clear. It wants to overtake the United States as the #1 superpower. We know all the circumstantial evidence points to a lab leak out of Wuhan, and yet Joe Biden has yet to raise any of this. With Xi Jinping, 4 phone calls with the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, Xi Jinping.
Yeah. No, I think, again, just another example of just how weak this administration is, and contrast it to President Trump. President Trump was the first president to truly stand up to China, to take the fight to China and say, we're not going to tolerate all the things you're doing in international trade. We're going to stand up and project strength from the Oval Office. And then now you have Joe Biden, where we get masks from China. And I always go back to early on in this administration, when our Secretary of State was in Anchorage, Alaska, meeting with his counterpart, and the treatment that Secretary Blinken allowed the Chinese to, the lecture he got from them, that would never happen to Mike Pompeo in a President Trump administration. Pompeo, first, they wouldn't have tried it. And Maria, if they did do it, Mike would have got up and flipped the table over and said, you don't talk to the greatest nation in history that way. We are the United States of America. We're not going to tolerate that. But yet Tony Blinken just sat there and took it. So, again, I think it just is overall picture and fact that there's weakness now being projected from the Oval Office, and it's frankly dangerous. It's not good for the country.
So you sent a letter, you and Mr. Comer sent a letter to Secretary Becerra. What do you want here? And are you going to investigate Anthony Fauci should you take the control and the majority in the House?
Yes, we definitely are. Representative Comer, myself, Senator Paul, Senator Johnson, we are definitely, if the American people put us back in charge, we are definitely going to do this, because we now know, without a doubt, that Dr. Fauci knew on January 31st and February 1st that this thing came from a lab. The top scientists in the country were saying it came from a lab. One scientist says, we got the notes now from the conference call on February 1st. One scientist says, I don't see how this can happen in nature, but it would be easy to do in a lab. And yet, just in a matter of days, they changed their position, write the article that appears in Nature Medicine magazine, which then gets cited in the now famous letter in the Lancet that became the gospel for the fact that Fauci can go out and tell people it didn't come from a lab, when in fact they knew it did. And the interesting thing is, and we point this out, we just learned this last week, the 2 doctors who were most adamant that this thing came from a lab early on. One is Dr. Christian Anderson. On January 31st, 2020, he says this to Dr. Fauci in an email. He says, virus looks engineered, virus not consistent with evolutionary theory. So he knew it came from a lab, but they changed their position. And a few months later, guess what? They get $8.9 million grant. Both him and Dr. Gary, the guy who said it couldn't happen naturally, they change their position and get an $8.9 million grant from Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, we're looking at the timeline right now, and it was February 2020 when scientists warned Fauci and Collins on a call that COVID-19 may have leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Then a month later in March, Gary signs his name to a paper which states that COVID-19 is not a laboratory construct or a purposely manipulated virus. We go on to look at April, where Collins emails Fauci about a Fox News report that says multiple sources believe COVID originated at that Wuhan lab, and asks if the NIH can help put down this very destructive conspiracy. We follow on this timeline, as you see on your screen, April 2020. Fauci responds saying it is a shiny object that will go away. And then in May of 2020, Fauci's NIH awards that $8.9 million grant money that you are referring to from the NIH. Connect the dots here. Was he paying off people to say the narrative he wanted said? And is he protecting the CCP?
Look, we don't know for sure, but all I know is that fact pattern seems to suggest that very point. I mean, they say it comes from a lab. That's where the evidence points. It suddenly changes. They switch 180 degrees, write the article. Dr. Fauci then uses the world. No, it didn't come from a lab. So the big takeaway I have, Maria, is this is the pattern we see from the Biden administration, from the left. This is the template they use. I mean, frankly, we saw it this past week. The Department of Education actually went to the National School Boards Association, asked them to send them the letter so they have the pretext to go do what they wanted to do, namely attack moms and dads and parents who are showing up at these school board meetings. So that's the template. Jim Comey did the same thing, frankly. A few years ago, he knew the dossier was bogus, but that was the pretext for him to go do what he wanted to do, which was spy on President Trump's campaign. Fauci did the same thing in my judgment. He got the letter written by the very scientists who knew this thing came from a lab, changed their position. They write the letter. Fauci uses that letter in the Lancet as the basis for saying, no, you're crazy if you believe this. This is a conspiracy theory. He went after Brett Baer on Fox News, for goodness sake. I mean, this is how bad the left is, and it goes right back to what the Attorney General just said. It's about power, it's about control, and it is as wrong as it can be.
Well, they don't want you to look at any of this. Instead, they are focusing on their voting bill, perhaps to stay in power for the Democrats for as long as possible, and January 6th. Real quick before you go, Leader Kevin McCarthy says he will not cooperate with the January 6th probe. The committee also asked to meet with you to discuss your communications with President Trump. You signed the January 6th ranking member Rodney Smith's letter asking for evidence, and you haven't gotten an answer. What can you tell us?
Well, first of all, I think anyone with common sense would be reluctant to go talk to this committee. They've already proven they will alter evidence and lie to the American people about it. So you got to question their just what they're up to when they prove they will do that. And then second, I think everyone in the country sees this as a political operation. This is designed to get after President Trump because they don't want him to run again. Because President Trump, I think, is going to run again, and I think he's going to win. And that's what this is designed to do. And as you rightly point out, Maria, they won't look at the one person, the Speaker of the House, and her responsibility. In fact, Benny Thompson, the chairman of the committee, has basically said she's off limits, and she's the one responsible for the security of the United States Capitol.
All right, Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much. We will be watching all of these developments.
Because the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that